Hello and welcome to another Lord of the Rings Rise to War video. I'm the player who plays as the King Under the Mountain, and today I am going to be doing a season update review, which I like to do at least once a week these days. We'll try and do a couple more, I think, in the next couple of weeks as the season starts to heat up a little bit, I would hope. We are around halfway through, but I will explain that shortly. We'll go through the leaderboards, we'll go through the map, we'll try and give an impartial view of the proceedings, because I think that's important. We might mention a couple of things around how this server was supposed to be and how it's been and how hopefully it changes, but Lord, has there been some tears over some stupid stuff so far, in my opinion, but that's a different thing. We're also going to look how the formation's going on. I am still using Witch King. I have made a couple of changes to just to try and see really what else might work. I'm also going to show quite a fun troop comp which got absolutely smashed, but it didn't help that there was a level 37 comment there. I'd like to think after this is leveled up a little bit, it's probably got a chance of doing okay. But we'll see. We'll talk through that and we'll kind of have a look at that at the back end. I'm going to talk through what I'm likely to do next with my formation and how to change my gear around and what I'm going to be looking for. And that will probably take us to the end of the video. I will be doing a live hopefully next weekend, I think on Sunday, probably for a couple hours. Just to try and talk through where things are really, because we spent a lot of time going around in circles, I feel, on this server. So, we're going to start at the beginning, and it is day 35 we're on. So, we've got about 20 days left, I would guess, in the season. No season ever really goes 60 days. I can't imagine this one will go beyond 55. So, we should be around about there. Currently number 10 in the teamwork rankings, which I'm pretty happy about that. We've slipped down the merit board a little bit, but there's a few reasons for that. We've been a bit busy, but we are still in the top 100. We are still ranked, and we are definitely still ranked in farm. So you will see a lot of lame and order players at the top 10. You will also see Raven, of course, in top 10 farm. Never leaves top 10 farm. There is a little bit of Toby mixed in, a little bit of Panda, a little bit of Bear. But generally, the top 50 obviously all comes from them. But in the majority, because of the way the map situation's gone, Lame and Order have, I think, now the most resources, but we'll check that out. Merit board wise, Raven is still way out in front. He is on for a 10 million season, I would say, in what was dubbed to be a mega server. That is a serious effort right there. Rounding out the top 5, we'll start there. So we've got Isaac, who is a great account. We played with Isaac last season. We've got this guy here from Order. I apologise, I cannot pronounce your name, but I know I fought you the other day and you did slap my Witch King combo. Dumbo, of course, is Matix in 4th. And then we've got Ricky Spanish in 5th. And to be fair to Ricky Spanish, right, I'm just going to put this out there. I'm pretty sure not that many seasons. 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, decent spend, but good effort. So there you go. So there's Ricky Spanish. So we are down in 65th, 2.5 million. I pretty much have full barracks, though, so I'd like to think we're going to get that up in the next few days. We were kind of fighting on the other side, but we'll go through that on the map. As for production, you have Lame and Order, 4.3 and 3.8 in Erebor. You have Bear, who have dropped quite significantly, I think about 400k-ish, I think, so they're down to 4 million. You have Panda at 3.7, who have also dropped, I think, quite significantly. I think they were over 4 million. So that's them two. You have Step at 3.3, Gods at 2.9, Merc at 2.9. They have recovered slightly, not a great deal. And then you've got the third fellowships that don't exist of Beer, Orm, and of course somewhere down here will be Exub. So we've got a few of those kind of false fellowships, as it were, that don't exist, that haven't got alts in, that weren't supposed to be in the server, but they're all here anyway, so there we go. As for the map, we're going to try and talk through the last week's events as impartially as possible. We took Durin's Tower earlier on. We have pushed back out of Heregion. But I'll tell you what, let's start there then. So, Angmar, Toby, Step. We are still in Troll Shores with a base because there's no point in moving from the situation that we've been in. In the last week, we have been pushed back from these passes here. Pretty sure after the last video we'd already regained capital, but I better talk about that really. So there isn't really a war up here between us and Lame and Order at the moment. There is a war here, and this is what always fascinates me about this game, is that I'm not sure if it still is, but for the last week it has been the biggest pin on the map between Order, Lame, Toby and Step. Order are on top. Biggest pin on the map. However, both teams have been accused of not really fighting each other, so if anyone can work that out, please let me know. So, we have somewhere in Narnia, Panda fighting Merc Gods, a little bit of Weak and a bit of Beer. They did flip Minhiria for a while. I think Arnold took it back possibly yesterday. I'm sure they flipped it. To be fair, someone will correct me, I'm sure, if I am wrong. They have been fighting Arnold all the way out here for a long period of time now. To the point whereby I think people got a little bit bored in the centre. So, with Gondor being all the way over here and seemingly no choice of Diplo sorting out the kind of Arnor-Gondor relationship, I get that's a tricky one because of the previous teams and how it split and all that kind of stuff. Get that. But now, when this pin updates, I would be very surprised if this pin was less than 20 million. And if it is less than 20 million, something has gone horribly wrong, is my point. Now, I know there's a few other small pins knocking around, pretty non-existent, but basically until yesterday, Gondor had kind of abandoned the centre, so Erebor took the ring, Erebor pushed us back, they basically farmed all these internal lands, which they have a complete right to do so, took all the passes barring this one here into the centre, and yeah, pretty much just farmed the way across. Got a bit bored, I would say, from Erebor's point of view. However, it looks like now they're in a little bit more of a war now, with the situation the way it is. So Gondor focused west, and I was watching a video the other day where I think the choice between trying to take the ring or keep farmland was the option that was kind of put out there. And I guess at that point, I think it's criminal that people would rather keep some farmland than actually try and win a season. Like, I get there's grudges and things like that, and I do try and keep personal opinion out of videos. I just think it's very difficult. I know people have fell out, but you know, I personally wouldn't have conceded the centre just to continue a war in the West. But there you go. Particularly when inside the entirety of Mordor there is 10, even some 11 tiles, and some 8s and some 9s. And I know this because I own some tiles in Mordor. So there you go. Right, so other pins. We have 3.9 million in the Isengard area between Panda Gods, Merc, Beer, Toby and Weak. We also have another pin here between Gods, Bear, Panda, Merc and Beer. That is in Dunland. That is a fairly low pin because of the way that's kind of transpired and how it's played out. Another small pin there. And then you have this mysterious pin here, which I think was the pin that caused all sorts of chaos. Where is the Toby pin? There is another pin around here somewhere whereby until yesterday, Toby had a sort of 13 million pin over here or something stupid. There was a thought process that we'd sent all of our players down here, which we hadn't. We had about 20 to 30, depending on the time zone. But we just did pretty good work down there, and we used the time zones to our advantage. So in that area in particular, it was our sort of Japanese player base that were around that area and our Asian player base. And to be fair, because of the way the timescales matched up, they did very well in their active hours, and we're constantly trying to push back. And I don't really want to go into the reasons why we were even over there, but reality is this server was set up to be something whereby if there was teams that were clearly outpowered, other teams could potentially step in and do something about that. And I know it's something that Fellow talked about quite a lot on his streams, particularly before the last 4 or 5 days. And I think it was felt, I don't know, perhaps Gondor were very much overpowering Arnor. Erebor were overpowering Angmar as well, to be honest. So we couldn't really afford to go down here as much as probably what we did, even, to be honest. But we went down there and tried to help out a little bit and take a little bit of heat off Arnor. And in the end, it seems we're all slowly coming to centre, but it's going to be slowly to centre. And I think it'll be fun once everyone's there. But if you're telling me that in a war game, you know, people say a lot of different things in a war game. Do they want to fight? Do they want to diplo? Whatever it might be. And without going too deep into it, I think sometimes you've got to try and remove yourself from the situation. And I'm not sure we're all very good at that, because we all become politicians in our own teams, and we all see our own point of view a lot. And I get that, and that's fine. I think, though, sometimes I believe, for example, one of the stumbling blocks between Gondor and Arnor, for example, was that there was Woses camps, obviously, in the Arnor areas, and Gondor would have liked to keep them. Obviously, they've worked hard to get them, completely understand it. But if you are asking a team to give up the pretty much single reason why they started in Arnor to make a deal, I don't know how anyone ever accepts that deal, because it's kind of the whole point in why you started in the region that you have. So I don't want to be seen to take sides, because I don't feel like I am, but I just want people to understand that sometimes you have to sacrifice something for the greater good in this game. And it's not about just falling out constantly. World chat's been spicy, all that kind of stuff. And there's been a lot of finger pointing at different teams, and I think, you know, we all have choices. I think each team's allowed to play however they want to play. That's kind of the point in the server. But you also have to expect that if you react to something in a certain way, someone is also going to react to that. And I think that's also okay. No deal has to be accepted just because you've offered it. But then a counter offer also doesn't have to be accepted. So people have to remember sometimes that it is a war game. I would suggest it's probably the key to that. And that's kind of where the map's at. Oh, there's also a pin up here, which I'd forgotten about, which is Loth and Order as well. So it's interesting that Loth have actually, I think Loth took that keep back and are now sort of fighting a little bit of Order up there. I think Rohan took this as well after that. So yeah, there's still teams on the map. There's still Iron fighting over here with some of Arnor. So that'll be Isengrim's lot fighting over there. So it's been quite an active map. I just think it's been a disappointing server, because I don't think the principles behind how it was made have not been carried out. And at the first sort of calling of how it was supposed to be carried out, there was a lot of tears. So I find that difficult. But anyway, we have sort of 20 days left, and I'm sure it'll be exciting, and all this will be forgotten about. But kind of don't want to rant about that, but there you go. So that's the map, right? Now I'm just going to go into the formation that I'm currently using. So obviously I did get Shadow to level 50. He was in this main comp, and it was a full evil comp. However, me being me, I can't help myself. I've put Dane back in currently, okay? Because I wanted to see if I could still get away with using Witch King to create some damage, still get away with Saruman to create some damage. I've taken out Sauron, so I've increased my early damage with Gandalf the White because I'm using White Rider. I'm also still, even though I'm not burning as many stacks of White Council as quickly, due to the Relic and this whole double 10% hit and his normal attack, you know, even Gandalf's getting through some sort of decent levels of attack in round one. I'm using Witch King with double strike and full evil troops, so I'm getting a lot more kind of hits there as well. So I'm still clearing White Council really fast. And I think if I've actually put one of the reports in there, if not, I will find the report, and you'll see that what this does with Dane sometimes when it works is that it creates a really nice round 2 damage, which is pretty sweet, really, to be honest. But I think I got about 35k out of Dane in round 2, which is a really good size hit. So Doesn't work all the time. Dane still gets stunned. Obviously, even with just White Council, I've got no evade. I've got no Sauron for debuff in this team. I've got no crowd control from Sauron. I'm hoping the Witch King is doing enough crowd control to make that work. Obviously, I lose a little bit of bleed damage because Shadow's not hitting as often as he is because I'm using Dane. So it's kind of tossing up those big hits from Dane against the multi-hits from Shadow. Woodman throw a real curveball in that as well, to be honest, when we're fighting Layman Order, for the simple reason that they can evade any attack. So I felt against Layman Order, probably Shadow and Saruman was the best way to go about it with Witch King, because I could do lots of small hits, which if one was evaded, it wasn't completely countering my damage output. So with my formation I've currently got, I've actually got two level 45, one level 45 and one level 46 commander. And what I will probably do tomorrow is I will probably switch in Sauron for Witch King and go full circle back to what I was perceived to be the meta, and we'll go from there. I would also like to try a 3-1 formation, and the plan is that I am going to use kind of this set here, and I'm going to give that to Gandalf the White. I'm going to use this as a full refined pipe, probably with agility, to be honest. I'm going to swap this out for a Reach of the Riddermark, and then it can double up as like a Skullhelm set because it'll be quite quick. And I'm probably going to change the chest as well. I'm not sure yet what to, but I might use Berserker's Raiment so I get a little bit of focus. I'm still going to get some reduction from the call. Interested to see how that works, but I'm going to try and make a set that probably doubles up for Skal and maybe Gandalf, I guess, and then we'll move this gear over onto Sauron, and Sauron can tank a little bit more, and try it in a 3 support formation with Witch King, Dane, Sauron, and Gandalf the White, because I think Witch King can put out enough damage to make that work as well, even though I've not got the evade that some people use during that formation with a Gil. So interesting to see how that goes. I'll show some reports because I think it's been a little while since we've done those. So I'll start at the beginning. So this was the sort of combination I was using before, the Witch King. Snagger's great troop for Witch King in this build. Just to talk through what I kind of did, because this isn't the most defensive set, I moved the spear throwers onto Sauron. And it's a bit weird because it kind of created this reverse tank role. So my DDs were getting hit. Sauron wasn't necessarily getting hit. But he was still putting out okay damage. So I felt that the damage output was still good. So, you know, we've fought a lot of Woses, a lot of Rangers in the north. Really nice Gandalf there, by the way. And a nice Dane. So, again, you know, Snaggers survive very well because of the amount of command that I've got in this. Even though I haven't got much defense in there. So that was quite nice. Again, same principle in my formation, you know, Range of the North and Woses. This formation that I've made does struggle against high-end players who are using Woses, because the kind of multi-strike system that I'm trying to use doesn't give me the advantage that it would in a normal fight. I have changed Saruman back to full agility since this, and I have found that it's been okay. It's just hard when you hit Woses because it doesn't matter so much. So this is a nice win versus Syria, to be fair. So this formation, it's been working to a degree. It can get trashed, and that's what I didn't necessarily like about it. This is Kevin's B team. Again, really solid gear. Perhaps need a little bit more respect in the Undying, but Thorin with Snaggers doing some great work. And of course, nice to see a Dane, but full evasive Dane at Z8 doing only 60k makes me sad. But this is the sort of standard blueprint for how I'm trying to create damage. So you can get a lot out of this, and the Snaggers were surviving really well. I've tried in recent reports to use half trolls instead, so I think I've got a couple of reports in here of half trolls instead of Snaggers. The damage is less, don't get me wrong. I also don't necessarily like half trolls on Witch King because it makes him so slow that it throws out my skill order, but I felt I needed to test it anyway. I think Rad the Black Bear, I believe, was Blackie last season. And if I got that wrong, I apologise, but I think it is. So, again, really nice formation. A little bit off meta, but nice formation. Good win for us there. Then we fought I haven't fought much Panda at all, to be honest, because they weren't really on our side of the map when we were doing all this. So a lot of this was me fighting Gondor the other day. And again, Witch King, great damage output, really solid from all three of them, to be honest, across the board. So that was good. Chew Patrick is Patrick R, I think. So again, really nice C5 Gil. Using tier 2s, to be fair to him, so Z11 Gandalf the White. A Dane doing 22k. I mean, it's just criminal. I actually had a report earlier on from Saruman, and I need to analyse it a little bit more. But I think it was 30k damage, and he survived 6 rounds, only getting 1 stun. It was like a proper wild, ridiculous report, and it was due to Woodman, because every attack he had just seemed to be evaded. So ridiculous, really. But there you go. Estra loves a tier 4 com. And I love hitting it, to be honest, because it gives some really juicy merit. But this, again, you see, I mean, look, the numbers that we're getting out of this formation are very good. Gwahir with Hull Trials is wild, by the way, but there you go. So that was almost like, please train more to hit tier 4. But it was nice because you get some nice damage numbers. So I felt alright about that. It was a nice result. Again, Snagger's doing a good job. Shalala, again, Swans, really nice formation. Z10, Z1 Dane, R13 Saruman, and a Z1 Gandalf the White. And we've done pretty well there, I think, all things considered. Obviously, the Snaggers have died. We're still left with some spear throwers, but really like that, to be fair. Nice report. So, like I say, this does work. It's just, it's hard. Hard to work out sometimes what goes wrong with it when it goes wrong. I mean, this is a really nice formation as well, to be honest, but very happy with this result. You see a lot of this because of the Seafarers and them taking away minus 30% commander damage, but it's quite nice because Witch King can then make up some of the numbers for me, so this is why I quite like this formation. We're still getting good damage numbers anyway, but so that was good. This is Lupe's B team indefinitely. His A team 1,000,000% slaps me. But a very, very nice B team. And it begs a question for a future video, I think, or probably on the live, of whether a B team is actually viable for most accounts. Just because I think it's a lack of supports that actually kills it off. So I think this is the first fight where, I switched to Half Troll. So my only issue with the Half Troll is it threw out my skill order. So what actually happened was Saruman acted before Witch King, which isn't completely terrible, but the issue then was I wasn't quite quick enough in a lot of fights to stay ahead of these Gandalf the Whites, so I did then lose out quite significantly on certain stuff. So again, Ifka Bear, always a tough opponent, always around the battlefield. So that was good. 78k from the Half Trolls though, so a little bit less damage from the Snaggers. The other thing is, obviously, they are cheaper, but they're not the cheapest of units. But I do like their bleed. I think that's quite nice. So yeah, that was good with Half Trolls. This is why I switched Dane back in, and like it's just hard to ignore sometimes the amount of damage he can do. So I've put spear throwers on him, so he's got a ranged troop. Their HP isn't terrible. Again, it's using this 4 evil units formation, so Black Captain's going off. I'm getting a bleed twice, putting some physical damage out there, so it's quite nice. Como's account, I'm not sure if that's pronounced correctly, but it's not a small account. Nice scale, but we're doing good stuff there, and Witch King, to be fair to him, does keep his troops alive, so 68k there as well. Again here, Dane doing good, Witch King doing good. Nice to see someone using something a little bit different. So we've got Kieran here doing 50k, Saruman at Z1, Sauron at Z1 as well. I didn't realise Sauron was at Z1 actually, but with those Woodmen using the evade and things like that, I thought that was pretty good. The other thing I like about Half Trolls is that they are ignore stun, and they also do focus damage received minus 30%, which is quite nice. And then with them inflicting this bleed, it's nice that the bleed stacks with the bleed from spear throwers as well. So you're doing that kind of multi-hit point thing. And I have toyed with the idea that maybe Shadow is the commander to put in instead of Saruman, One, because Saruman at the moment's annoying the hell out of me by blowing me up a lot. Although it's slightly less now that he's got agility, but still blowing me up a lot. And Shadows, obviously multi-hit early rounds will produce more bleed. So I've kind of, I don't know, I'm toying with that as an idea at the moment, but I haven't gone there yet. But we might try it before the season end. I think this was a really good report. Again, half trolls staying alive. Nice to get that counter sometimes on stuff, or at least have something that's medium. And again, a pretty solid report. But what I will say is, I think more to do with level. When I'm hitting the high end accounts of this formation, it's not quite putting in the work sometimes that I would expect it to. This was a nice report earlier on. This is actually Ragnar's account, and he's using 3 lots of Woodman. Now I get the evade's pretty random, but I'll tell you what, I'm actually going to look here because I haven't looked at this report, but let's see what round 2 yields. So you see that round 2 is still a pretty big hit for me because I've already shredded everything. And then round 3 is also a pretty decent hit, and then round 4 evens itself out. So it's interesting. I will find... I didn't put it in there, I don't think, unless it was the Bambi one. So look what round 2 does. See, so round 2 again there's a decent hit. And I think this one was also quite a good hit. There you go. So this was actually a report, yeah. So in this report in round 2, Dane actually does about 35k damage, which is pretty decent really from King Under the Mountain and from Ironfoot. So it's like a mini Bjorn in round 2 because I've already stripped White Council. Pretty nice. It's nice when it works, that formation, put it that way. Like I say, I will change some stuff around. I'm over here. There is, I think, some stuff going on at the moment with this pass, where we're trying to take this pass off Erebor. We've got a little bit down from it, but we'll see how that goes. We are notoriously bad at sieging passes, put it that way, which isn't ideal. Where was I going with this? Because I've now distracted myself. Oh, yeah. I know where I am. Okay. Right, this tile here. Pretty sure this is it. So, what I've been kind of messing around with in the background, and don't get me wrong, it gets slapped, and thanks for Law for kind of testing this out for me, which is appreciated. Now, it gets slapped here, okay, by Loopy, but I'm quite interested to see how this goes once it's leveled up, because don't get me wrong, right, Loopy is not a small account, and obviously he's half full here, not even, well, just about half full, but it's not a small account. Okay, it's running quite a bit of tier 4 and some trolls and tier 3 cav and woodman. We've got a level 37 common here in Sunind, so we're trying to do something that brings back those commanders that everyone used to love. Okay, so point 1, Kiru. Now the gear's not perfect because things need changing around if it's actually going to work. But all this stuff works together. So we're stacking up, from Evil Men, we're stacking with unit damage stats, we're stacking chariots, we're stacking damage for, we're taking some damage reduction here. So also we've got the chance of stun. So there's a bit of crowd control in there from Kirun. So that's kind of that one. We're working on the bleed as well from the chariots. So we've got a bleed in here as well. So that's quite nice. All these bleeds in here stack, by the way, which is also good. So Black Captain basically gets rid of any kind of White Council inside round 1, pretty much. We're using Sunind to boost the attack of the Orcs, and then that is obviously modified by her command stat. We're also adding damage dealt to the Orcs, so our little spear throwers are actually getting quite a decent chunk of damage dealt increase. When she is level 50, don't get me wrong, this is C7, we will also have the full heal. What we might do is we might even test out a full Evil Men build and see what happens. But at the moment we're kind of 2 and 2. So the half trolls bleed is nice. Witch King doing what Witch King does. He's there for basically the debuff. Got to be faster, I would say, than this, so that we're applying the debuff early enough. This was just what we had. I say lying around. Law's account has a lot of gear and respect lying around. So, he's using the spear throwers here, and Black Captain, Nazgul for some crowd control. So we're getting a lot of strikes in there. And then we've got Azrakor, and Azrakor is one of my favourite commanders to play around with at the moment. And I will try and explain why. If he is faster than the Witch King, his percentage chance of dual blows triggers first, so he ignores Black Captain, but uses this for 10 rounds, which is very, very, very handy. So it allows him to try and get dual blows with something like a spear thrower, get some more bleed in there over 10 rounds. We have Raider again, which is the follow-up damage, which is also quite nice. With the skill order of this as well, and this is obviously just the heal, so I'm just going to sort of have a look at the heal. Chances are we might try and switch this into burn damage, I think, at some stage. But I'm quite excited about trying something with Azrakor. What I will say is I think it's the Sunning skill. So this here, obviously this formation is with Evil Men, and because of the skill order of the troops, again, this follow-up damage happens because it never triggers on the same unit as Azrakor's because he's quicker. So they both trigger, which is quite nice. So you get the extra little bit in there as well. So it's quite a well theoried formation. It's likely to be semi-cheap, I would guess. But once it's got levels, I'll be very interested to see. Like with Scrolls today, for example, it'll probably get one of these up to 45, and then probably the day after will be at level 45 of all four. Be interesting to see how that gets on then, because obviously the gear isn't optimized either. But looking forward to trying out that formation a lot more. Like I say, all the bleed stack. Potentially, if Sunning doesn't work out so well, we could throw a Shadow in there, for example, just to get some actual physical damage in, plus also, trigger those bleeds nicely and things like that. But I'm looking forward to trying that because I think it's all very much, it triggers each other, and it's nice that the dual blows sort of stack along, and you can get all the bleed stack in. There's a lot of damage in that formation if you can unlock it. So I'm looking forward to trying that more than this one fight. And that is pretty much covering everything that I wanted to cover today, really. So I think people are going to go back to trying to take this pass. Whether it happens or not, unsure is probably the key. But it is on our side. So I always feel if a pass is on your side, you have a good chance. But in the meantime, as always, if in doubt, always follow your nose.